Single dad rescued stranded CEO, unaware she was his boss. The storm that night felt like a punishment sent from heaven. Rain slammed against the cracked windshield of Daniel Carter's old pickup truck as he fought to keep the wipers moving fast enough to see. The road was empty, swallowed by sheets of water and darkness, except for the faint glow of his headlights cutting through the mist. His hands, calloused and rough from years of hard labor, tightened on the steering wheel. He was tired, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones when life never gives you a break. A single dad, a mechanic, a man doing everything he could to raise his 8-year-old daughter Lily after her mother walked out without saying goodbye. That night, he was just trying to make it home after a long shift, praying his old truck wouldn't die before he could tuck his little girl into bed. Then, through the rain and wind, he saw it, a black luxury car stranded by the side of the road, hazard lights blinking weakly. The front bumper was crumpled, one tire blown out. Without thinking, Daniel pulled over. He knew what it felt like to be stuck, to need help and find none. He grabbed his flashlight and ran through the storm. Inside the car sat a woman, motionless, her head resting on the steering wheel. He tapped on the window, shouting over the thunder. When she finally lifted her face, the beam of his flashlight caught a flash of fear in her eyes, and something else. Desperation. Her makeup was streaked, her designer coat soaked, but her expression was raw, vulnerable. She looked like someone who wasn't used to being helpless. "Hey, it's okay," Daniel said softly, though his voice was nearly drowned by the storm. "You're safe now." She nodded, trembling, and let him help her out of the car. He noticed how she shivered, trying to maintain composure despite the cold and chaos. He guided her to his truck, wrapped his old jacket around her shoulders, and offered her the warmth of the heater. When he went back to inspect her car, he realized it would take hours to tow, the kind of mess that couldn't be fixed on the side of the road. Without hesitation, he offered to take her to his house nearby until the storm passed. She hesitated, wary at first, but one look at his honest eyes convinced her to trust him. High voltage. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the goodness still left in people, make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe to channel name. Your support helps us share more stories that touch the heart. High voltage. The ride to his home was quiet. She stared out the window, lost in thought. Daniel didn't ask questions. He just drove, his mind wandering to Lily, who was probably sitting by the window, waiting for him like she always did. When they arrived, his daughter came running to the door, her small face lighting up when she saw him. But then she froze, eyes wide, at the sight of the elegant stranger behind him. "Daddy, who's that?" Lily asked shyly. Daniel smiled tiredly. "Just someone who needed help, sweetheart." The woman introduced herself as Claire. Her voice was calm but heavy with exhaustion. She thanked Daniel, insisting she didn't want to impose, but he waved her concern away. His home was small, 2 rooms, worn-out furniture, the faint scent of oil and metal from his work clothes, but it was filled with warmth. Lily offered her a blanket and even shared her favorite mug of cocoa, chattering about her drawings and school. Claire watched, her icy composure softening with every word the little girl spoke. As the storm howled outside, Claire sat quietly by the fireplace, studying this small family. The walls were lined with pictures, Daniel holding baby Lily, the two of them laughing at a picnic, moments of simple joy captured despite their struggles. It felt foreign to her, this kind of warmth. She was used to boardrooms, deadlines, and decisions that made people cry. She was the CEO of a global auto company, the very company that owned the repair shop Daniel worked at. But of course, he didn't know that. And as she sat there in his home, wearing his jacket, sipping cocoa, and watching him patch a hole in the ceiling with quiet determination, she realized she didn't want him to know. Not yet. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, revealing the mess the storm had left behind. Daniel fixed her car temporarily so she could drive into town, but before she left, Lily hugged her and whispered, "You can come visit anytime." Claire smiled, touched more deeply than she expected. She promised she would. Over the next week, Claire couldn't stop thinking about them, about that humble mechanic who never asked for anything, who offered her everything without knowing who she was. She looked him up in the company database. There he was, Daniel Carter, employee of 5 years, excellent performance, often working overtime. A single father. She found out he had requested a transfer closer to home several times, but it had been denied. Something about that broke her. Here was a man doing everything right, yet life kept making it harder. A few days later, Claire visited his repair shop, this time dressed in her professional suit, heels clicking against the concrete floor. When Daniel saw her, his wrench nearly slipped from his hand. She looked completely different, powerful, composed, untouchable. But her eyes held the same softness he'd seen that night. He didn't know what to say, but she smiled gently and said she wanted to thank him properly. From that day on, things began to change. Claire started visiting the shop more often, under the guise of business inspections, but it was clear she was drawn to something else, to the simplicity of Daniel's world, to the purity of the bond he shared with Lily. She watched him struggle, fixing cars until his knuckles bled, still managing to laugh with his daughter and find joy in small things. Slowly, quietly, she began helping, approving his long-overdue transfer, increasing his pay, sending resources to the shop anonymously. She never told him. She just wanted him to breathe a little easier. But fate has a way of revealing truth when you least expect it. One afternoon, Daniel was summoned to the corporate office. Nervous but curious, he went, only to find Claire waiting in the boardroom. When he realized who she truly was, his heart sank. He felt betrayed, foolish, small. He couldn't believe the woman he'd opened his home to was his boss, the one who held the power to decide his livelihood. Claire tried to explain that she hadn't meant to deceive him, that she simply wanted to experience life beyond her walls of glass and power. But Daniel walked away, wounded pride in every step. Weeks passed. Work went on. Claire felt the absence of his presence like a constant ache. The board meetings felt hollow, the city skyline from her office window cold and lifeless. She'd tasted something real, and now she couldn't go back. One rainy evening, she found herself driving down that same road again, the one where he'd saved her. And this time, she stopped in front of his small house, unsure what to say. When Daniel opened the door, she didn't speak. She just looked at him, eyes shimmering with emotion. Lily ran to her, hugging her legs as if no time had passed. That simple act melted every wall between them. Claire took a trembling breath and said, "I never meant to lie. You helped me when I was no one. You saw me as a person, not a title. And that meant more than you'll ever know." Daniel looked at her for a long moment, then finally said, "You don't owe me anything, Claire. But, maybe we both needed that storm." From that night forward, something unspoken bloomed between them. Claire began spending more time with Daniel and Lily, helping with school projects, sharing dinners, even laughing again. The woman who once led thousands of employees found herself happiest sitting at a worn kitchen table, watching a little girl draw hearts on napkins. Daniel, too, began to trust again. He realized that maybe, just maybe, life had finally given him, and his daughter, a second chance. Months later, the company announced a new initiative for single parents, funded by Claire herself. And when she stood on stage, giving her speech, Daniel stood quietly in the crowd, holding Lily's hand. Their eyes met, and for a brief, powerful moment, it was as if the whole world disappeared, just two souls who had saved each other in more ways than one. Cloud with rain. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that kindness, honesty, and love can still change lives, please like, share, and subscribe to channel name Cloud with Rain. Speech balloon special request. Before you go, comment below, what would you have done if you were in Daniel's place? Your thoughts matter more than you know.